y'all, and welcome to your first lesson in my chemistry course. So we are in Unit 1, and Unit 1 is matter and measurement. So we're going to learn all about matter, what it is, and how to measure. Everything you're going to use in this unit, you will use the rest of the school year, so you want to make sure you're paying careful attention to all the details. And we are in Skill 1, what is matter? So to start, this is my dog, Ralphie. And Ralphie isn't just here because he matters a lot to me. I know you guys are probably laughing really hard at that. I just can't hear you because it's recording. But Ralphie is matter. So Ralphie is part of chemistry. We'll come back to that. So chemistry is a study of matter and how it changes. So what is it? What does it do? That's what we care about. Matter is anything that has both mass and volume. And since Ralphie has mass and volume, Ralphie is matter. Well, now let's figure out what that means. Mass measures how much stuff is in an object. So this car has mass because there's stuff that makes it up. These clouds have mass. You know that clouds are made out of water, so that's stuff that's in it. And these little E. coli, which I hope none of you guys ever get an E. coli infection, those are nasty little infections, that's made of stuff. Those are all made of stuff, so it has mass. Mass changes based on how much stuff is in it, right? So this car right here has mass. If I pack it full of really heavy material, then that's going to have more mass within the space of that car, right? So it's just how much stuff there is. It's measured in grams, and in the lab we're going to use a scale to find it. Don't get confused though, this is not weight. Weight is actually mass times gravity. Gravity is that force that holds you to the earth or any other object with mass. So if you take physics, you're going to learn that there's always this attractive force between two objects with mass, and that's gravity. This is not that. We do use gravity, though, to figure out the mass of things because our scales automatically cancel out gravity. So if you brought this scale to the moon that has a different gravity, you would have to recalibrate it or else it would not show the right mass. And if you think about that, it makes sense because when you go into space, you become weightless, right? Like the astronauts float around on the spacecrafts, and they still have just as much stuff in their bodies as they had on Earth, but now they can't stand on a scale and get a mass. So matter still has mass when in space, but it doesn't have weight. Volume is going to be how much space something takes up. So it's how big or how small it is. So this is measured in 3 dimensions. So it's measured in liters, which is generally for a liquid or sometimes a gas. Gases can go either way for how we measure, or it could be cubic meters. So cubic meters is going to be a solid and then again sometimes a gas. And what I mean by 3 dimensions is if you take your arms and you stick it out, so right and left, that's 1 dimension. Front and behind you is another dimension, and then up and down, that's that 3rd dimension. So you've got 3 ways of moving about space. Some standard objects you learned about if you've taken geometry have a formula to figure out the volume. So for example, the volume of a cube is going to be length times width times height. You have probably done that so many times in your math class that you are very familiar with that formula. But we're not necessarily going to use a lot of cubes in chemistry, so we need other ways to figure out the volume of things. So liquids can be poured into this device. So this is called a graduated cylinder. So it's shaped like a cylinder, and then it has these little lines in it that are called graduations. So you can pour it in, and we're going to learn how exactly to pour it in. There's a specific method of how to read it after you pour it. But you can read these little graduations or these lines to say how much there is. Then if you have an irregular object that's a solid, then there's no formula to figure it out, like maybe some crazy rock or something. So you would fill up a graduated cylinder with water, and then you would place the rock in it and see how much it rises, and however much it rose, then that's how big it is. So that's called displacement. We're going to go through that more when we talk about measurement later in this unit. So what is matter made of exactly? Well, all matter, no matter what type of matter it is, it's all made of atoms. And you've probably seen a picture like this, maybe if you watch the TV show Big Bang Theory, right? You've seen this. It's not the perfect representation of an atom, but it's a good way to start thinking about what atoms look like. And so atoms are the building block of all matter. Everything that's matter is made of atoms. So cars are made of atoms. Clouds are made of atoms. E. coli are made of atoms. These are all matter, and they're all made of atoms. They all have mass. They all have volume, so they're all matter. So you might be thinking, okay, those atoms sound pretty cool, but how big are they exactly? So let's pose the question, how many atoms are there in 1 grain of sand? So I'm not talking about the whole beach. I'm talking about this one eensy-weensy, teensy-weensy little piece of sand. In that grain of sand, there are 2.01 times 10 to the 22nd atoms. Okay, so let's break that down because that is a weird looking number. It's scientific notation. Another thing we will cover soon. So this means 2.01, so essentially 2, times 10, 22 times. Okay, let's write that number out. Whoa. 201000000000000000000 atoms. It's a lot of atoms. As far as I know, there is no name for a number this big. It is that many atoms. If you tried to count all of the atoms in 1 grain of sand, if you were counting 1 atom per second, you started, somehow you were able to count as soon as you were born, you would die before you counted every single atom in a grain of sand. That's how small they are. There's that many atoms in that little tiny thing. They are so small that the human brain can't fully grasp how small they are. We just make these models to help us think about them, but our models are even on a different scale. So it's really, really, really small. So you are an organism, right? And in biology, you guys talked about what it means to be a living thing. And as a multicellular, advanced organism, you are made out of organ systems, right? And if you break down those organ systems, those break down even further for organs. And if you break down those organs, organs are made out of tissues. And then that tissue is made out of cells. So now we're at the bio level, what you guys talked about in biology class. You talked all year about cells, right? And so you know that there are things smaller than the cell. There's all those organelles, and then there's stuff that makes up the organelles. If you get into the stuff that makes up the stuff that makes up the organelles, those are molecules. Inside the molecules, those are atoms. So you guys talked about DNA in biology. So I want you to picture this for a second. In your whole body, you've got more cells than there are stars in all of the galaxies. So many. But let's just talk about that one cell that's too small for you to even see. And then in that, you have a nucleus that's even smaller than the cell. And then in that, you have your DNA, your genetic code. So the DNA is made of bases. You've got guanine, cytosine, thymine, adenine, okay? So 4 bases. And then they have a repeating pattern. So you could write out a genetic code, T, T, C, A, T, G, whatever it happens to be. If you used normal textbook font and you wrote out somebody's genetic code, no pictures in these textbooks, you would fill over 25 textbooks just writing those bases. Well, those bases are molecules. Those aren't even the atoms. The atoms would be 20 times more textbooks just to write what atoms are in just the DNA, just in the nucleus, just in one cell of your body. So your body has so many atoms in it, we can't even begin to talk about how many atoms. You, therefore, since you are made of atoms, you're matter. The last thing I want to cover is a lot of times when people think chemistry and they think of chemicals, this picture comes to mind. These like really toxic, really scary chemicals. Like people might say, oh my gosh, I'm going to get food that doesn't have any chemicals in it. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but all matter is chemicals. Every single thing out there has some sort of chemical formula because it's all made out of atoms and we can say what atoms are in it. So that water that you drank, yeah, that's a chemical. Or that hamburger you ate earlier, that's a chemical. Any cleaning product, whether it is organic or not, is a chemical. So make sure that you are not confusing the word chemicals with something that's bad. So you can have toxic chemicals, those are bad, but the others are not. And if you forget that, just remember, Ralphie's made of chemicals, so they can't all be bad. All right, I'll see you in the next set of notes, and hope you learned a lot. If not, ask me questions, shoot me an email, whatever you need to do to understand. I'm there for you. Okay, thanks.